Okay, welcome to Beyond Conventional Mental Health Care, New Frontiers in Plant and Food Medicines. We are beyond blessed to have you all here with us. Let's take a quick moment of silence to invite in the sacred. The energy of community and gratitude is rushing through my blood as I be with you all here tonight. Thank you for showing up. This is an epic event, and I can already tell that it's going to make a difference locally and beyond. I think you're here because you have an interest in shuffling the deck, stirring the pot, as we call it, some meaningful discussions about mental health care, and we have incredible experts here who have decades of experience to share about nature, plants, food, connection, relational health. I'm curious if there's anyone from outside the LA area here with us tonight. A couple hands, welcome. You guys are welcome here. Thank you so much for taking a trip to be a part of this incredible event. The title, Beyond Conventional Mental Health Care, New Frontiers in Plant and Food Medicine, I think might be a little bit misleading because the topics we're going to talk about tonight are not new. These are things that have been around for centuries, for thousands of years. These are not actually breakthroughs. These are topics that have been actively suppressed. And we are here to bring them to the light, to shed new light onto important topics that have stood the test of time. We're here to remember who we are, to return to the basics, get back to the soil, get back to our roots, and get back to each other. What we do have is some new science. We have a lot of published literature in the last few years connecting both food and plant medicine to a wide range of mental health outcomes. And we're going to talk about some of those tonight. We have experts in eating disorders, substance use disorders, depression, anxiety, ADHD, all of the above. I couldn't be more excited. This event wouldn't be possible without our collaborators. We are going to hear from a few people in just a minute, but I want to start off by recognizing Raven House. Thank you so much. Antidote Lab is the facility that we are in right now. This is a sacred space. I can tell there's something already going on here. Wise Mind Nutrition, the Nutrition for Mental Health app. Hopefully you stopped by the booth. That is my baby. It is a tool to use nutrition and lifestyle medicine to improve mental health, and it is available for practitioners to use with your clients. I did create Wise Mind Nutrition to bridge the gap between nutrition and mental health, so that practitioners, coaches, physicians have a way of supporting your clients at a no-cost, low-cost option. We have several other contributors tonight. Good Idea Drinks. If you haven't had one, please make sure to get one with dinner. Talk to Brittany. We also have a discount code, which is WMN. If you'd like to order some, that stands for Wise Mind Nutrition. Please feel free to pick up a flyer. We have Skylight Psychedelics has contributed to our event from afar. Dr. Dana Lerman is from Colorado, and they have training for professionals to offer training on how to integrate psychedelic therapies into your practice. There are handouts with their information on the tables. Please feel free to check them out. We have dessert sponsored by Montanito. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone who's here. We have some other boothers that are with us tonight. SunCloud Health is here all the way from Chicago. Please feel free to check out SunCloud's program, which is really the crux of what we're talking about tonight, which is integrated mental health care. And Kara, where are you? Talk to Kara, please. Carolyn Costin's Institute is here with us. Carolyn is a pioneer in the eating disorder treatment world and has now begun training coaches to carry out really important, meaningful work across all levels of care. Please check out her booth. connect with Carolyn. You're going to hear a lot from her tonight. And the Winbrand Farms. Stephen Winbrand is here with us to bring the energy of the soil, to really get back to the real reason we're here, the growth and the recycling of life energy, vital life force. There's several other people that have helped put on the event tonight. Julian is part of the Dietitians for a Healthier America. If anyone's a dietitian, please talk to Julian. We have an organization in which we're trying to advocate for really elevating the nutrition and dietetic credential. And so we have a voice here as well. We have some volunteers from my team, Nutrition and Recovery, and Wise Mind Nutrition, Emily, Chris, Loda, Maria. From Antidote, we have Eric Campbell. Let's make a round of applause for everyone who helped out. Okay? Thank you. So before we hear from a few folks and get to our panelists, I just want to share a little bit about what motivated this event. I have my own personal mental health journey that started in 2006. I lived in a wide range of institutions, and when I really hit a hard reset and started my life over, I got a pretty strong intuitive call to connect to food. I didn't have a nutritionist. No one told me. I just knew that the blackberry had something in it that was going to help me. You know what I'm saying? I literally just walked the aisles in the store. I was like, this has to be beneficial for what I'm dealing with, right? The colors in here have to offer me something. So I just was intuitively called to nutrition and to plants as a way of my own personal healing journey, and it shaped my career. It led me down becoming, finishing a bachelor, getting a master's degree, becoming a registered dietitian, essentially finishing a PhD, getting a doctorate in public health, health psychology, and of course, being in the treatment field. So I recognize my bias toward the role of nutrition, food, and plants in mental health recovery. But this tonight is not about me. This is about the plants, las plantas. So let's consider why we're bringing nutrition and psychedelic medicine together. First of all, the research has exploded in recent years. If you've been following any of the scientific literature, you will see that they both have unique roles in depression, anxiety, PTSD, eating disorders, substance use disorders, ADHD, and there's a lot of similarities. If you think about, I want to use the term vibrant food tonight. There's a lot of different ways people describe real food. Sometimes we talk about organic food. There's a lot of buzz now about ultra-processed food versus minimally processed food, and perhaps that will come out. I just like the concept of vibrant food to capture plants that were grown with intention in high-quality soil, right? It was actually plants that were grown with the purpose of nurturing human life rather than just profit motives, right? And there's something about that energy that always caught my attention. So there's a couple similarities. One, people that are interested in nutrition, and from what I've observed, people that are interested in various forms of plant medicine describe a sense of oneness, right? A oneness with the environment, with each other. It's a connection energy. So people who shop at farmers markets, people that go to co-ops, people that feel a call to connect to plants and to community have something in common. And we're here to cultivate some of that energy tonight. It's a communal pride. I've shopped at the co-op in Santa Monica for the last 18 years. Anyone been to the co-op on Broadway? Couple hands? Come on. And I've been getting vegetable juice there for 18 years. And I've always appreciated the person who makes my juice for me. It's not just that I'm there for the juice. There's something about that space that really allows me to feel a part of something that my spirit needs, right? So when I get juice, I exchange small talk and smiles with the person that makes my juice, right? And so it'd be tempting to describe that it was the folate and the magnesium that have been transformative to my life, and I would say that they have. But there's also something about connection, right? That happens when we get over a meal, when people sit in various rituals, etc. And yes, people who experiment with various forms of plant medicine or psychedelic medicines, which we're going to hear about tonight, often do describe a recognition of connectedness, an acknowledgement of intelligence beyond human consciousness, plant intelligence, etc., plant consciousness. And so there's a correlation. There's a strong correlation, and that's why we brought them together. From my own personal observation, people who grocery shop, cook, and aim to eat vibrant food are more open-minded about the healing power of plants, whether it be herbal supplements or other facets of the plant kingdom. And then people on a plant medicine path seem to be more likely to care about the food that they eat. I've worked in eating disorder treatment for 12 plus years, and I remember 7, 8 years ago having a client who struggled with long-term bulimia nervosa. We did some meaningful work together, and she got the call to go to, I think it was Costa Rica, and she went into a place where they did plant medicine, and she came back and she was different. She didn't have the same body image disturbance, and her life changed. And I was like, wow, this is important. And it caught my attention. And I've since talked to many people who have had similar experiences. Couple more thoughts. My observations, there's people that don't resonate with nutrition. Like people that don't feel the vibrant effect of food, right? Perhaps they've never experienced it, never felt it, right? They're less likely to resonate with other plants. There are people that don't endorse the healing power. Perhaps they don't have much experience with it. And I want to make an important point before we move on. Broadly speaking, we know, based on the data, that intentional nutrition, colorful fruits and vegetables, a wide range of foods, is extremely beneficial for most mental health conditions, right? We have a lot of eating disorder practitioners in the space here tonight, eating disorder experts, and there are some exceptions that are worth talking about, right? In the context of highly restrictive eating disorders, getting overly obsessed with food quality, getting overly interested in juicing and going to farmers markets could actually be a part of someone's pathology, right? So my hope is that we as a field would stop doing broad blanket statements and say that everyone that has an eating disorder, if they were interested in eating colorful fruits and vegetables or juicing, that it would necessarily be pathological. I believe that we as a field can help discern and bring a lot more nuance into the conversation. And there's also an important exception with substance use disorders. We know that people who do plant medicines generally have improvements in their mental health. But there's also a wide spectrum of people that have a history of substance use disorders that might be better off staying abstinent and not touching these substances. We know that for sure. So instead of saying all people with eating disorders should not be able to be interested in plants, or all people that have a substance use disorder should never go on plant medicine, I think we as a field can start to think a little bit more critically and say who's who, what vibrations are people on, and who's getting the call. The format for tonight is I'm here to just moderate the spirit of the event and the time. I'm going to be watching the time, y'all. If you get a thumbs up from me, that means message is well received. Please consider moving on. Yes. Yes. We won't mute you, Carolyn. But I'm going to ask our panelists questions. If you have a clarification question, something that takes 30 seconds, I'm going to invite you to jump in, okay? If you have a discussion question that's going to take more time, we're going to ask you to save it for the end. If it's the kind of question that the other panelists are going to want to answer, we're going to wait, okay? So I will be keeping time, and want to also state that there's no hidden agendas here. I am personally aware of my own bias. I have a strong bias toward the role of nutrition in mental health. That is the song that I sing. That's the song that I've been singing in videos across the board for years. I write blogs hoping you guys read them, and I really do believe that there is something in the future of nutrition for some of the stuff we're talking about tonight. So I recognize my bias. My hope is that we can leave any polarizing energy behind us tonight. There is polarization in the eating disorder space, in the substance use disorder space, and the goal is to just come together and say, let's have meaningful discussions about how we can best serve our clients in the future of people that come across us. So once again, thank you for being at Beyond Conventional Mental Health Care, New Frontiers in Plant and Food Medicine. I'm going to introduce, yes, thank you. I'm going to introduce, appreciate it. I'm going to give a quick bio, and then we're going to hear from each of our panelists. Starting with Carolyn. Carolyn Costin has been a force in the eating disorder field for over 4 decades. As a recovered clinician, speaker, and author, she is best known for filling a gap in treatment services by opening the first residential program for eating disorders in the U.S. in 1996. Her programs combine standard evidence-based treatment practices with alternative therapies such as yoga, meditation, dietary supplements, equine therapy, and forest bathing. Her current passion is filling another gap by training and certifying eating disorder recovery coaches. And next we have Kim, Dr. Kim Dentist, a holistic psychiatrist, board certified in addiction medicine and eating disorder specialist, bringing lived experience with long-term recovery from bulimia, alcohol use disorder, food addiction, and developmental trauma. She is the co-founder, chief medical officer, and CEO of SunCloud Health, where she works tirelessly to improve care for patients who are poorly served by currently available treatments. She incorporates biological, psychosocial, and spiritual approaches into nuanced treatments for each patient. And lastly, Yeshaya Blakeney. He's a father of 4 and a husband, CEO and co-founder of the Recover Integrity Treatment Program and the Antidote Wholeness Program. He acts as an informal liaison between the psychedelic and recovery communities. An assistant rabbi, Yeshaya is deeply interested in the intersection of mental health, psychedelics, spirituality, psychology, philosophy, and the arts. So each of you has had an incredibly successful owner-operator journey in the mental health field. If you don't mind, please share just a little bit, a minute or two, about your own personal journey, how you got here, where you are today, starting with my dear friend, Carolyn Costin. Thank you.
It might take me my minute to turn this on.
You got this.
Right there?
There it is.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Carolyn, truly, for
I feel like
being
I got to
here.
talk on Chipmunk, Alvin and the Chipmunk speed for a minute or two. Anyway, what do you want me to say?
Tell us who you are. Land here for us.
Okay, well, I'm certainly grateful to be here. I mean, I'm feel lucky to be with this panel. I feel lucky to be talking about these issues. I think for most people who know me, know, and you said 45 years, something like that, in the field. I am not new to controversy. And for people who know me, that goes all the way back to telling patients I was recovered. Oh my God, you tell them you had an eating disorder? And then standing up at an international conference, someone reminded me tonight, she was there 35 years ago, and not only did I say I was recovered, I had 4 recovered patients who were with me and talked about their story. And that was IADEP, and it was when IADEP was a very strong 12-step program. That I didn't really know that at the time. But what I was saying is that I really believe you can be recovered from this, not always recovering or in recovery. And I had a way different approach than the 12-step addiction model. And then the next probably big controversial thing I did was open residential treatment, when everyone said, if they can't be seen with outside practitioners, then they need to be in a hospital. You can't do that. They're too sick. They need doctors and hospital. And I ran 4 hospital programs and realized that that is not the place where these people were going to get well, for many, many reasons. I had developed my eating disorder in the olden days, back when, really, I mean, over 50 years ago, 55 years ago, there were no books, no magazines, no journals, there was no social media. I mean, it's weird to think about. But so what I did was I started doing the things and treating people for the way that I had gotten my own healing. And that was a lot of nutrition research and philosophy also, like you were saying, and behavior modification and a little bit of Buddhist philosophy thrown in there. And so I just started treating people the way that I had healed to get better. The reason I started residential treatment, and I think is what's related to this talk tonight, is that there was nothing natural about hospitals. There was no hands-on relationship to food. We would treat people and they would leave the hospital and go back to having to go grocery shopping and having to portion their food and having to make food and all of those things that, how could we do that? Treat them for an eating disorder and then send them out without any of that training. And the first day I showed up to my first job when I got hired to run a hospital, and I was in my mid-20s, I went down to the dining table where the clients were coming down to eat, and the nurses were sitting there with clipboards. And they were sitting there, not eating, but writing, taking notes of the clients who were eating. And I went, oh, no, 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 no. First of all, put the clipboards down. If you don't, pay attention, be with them. You're a role model. And by the way, you need to eat the food. And you know what they said? We don't want to eat this food. And I was like, yeah, well, if you don't want to eat it, why should they eat it? And that was a huge push for me to open residential treatment.
Amazing. Thank you for being such a
I
pioneer
have more,
with us.
but I'll
yes,
stop.
We're going to come back. Kim D, can you tell us hello, who you are from your point of view? Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So grateful to be here tonight. Thanks for everybody who came here and who was part of putting this on. I'm delighted and honored to be part of this panel. And I got into this work, I've been in recovery since 2000 from bulimia that almost killed me, and alcohol use disorder, and didn't really understand what food addiction was. It wasn't intuitive to me when I walked through grocery stores that a BlackBerry might help me. I was drawn to the Twinkies, and the more processed, the better. So I had to be led, and boy, am I grateful that I was, because as both Carolyn and David have alluded to, there's, in the eating disorder field, this sort of standard groupthink is all foods fit for all people, all the time, and I think that approach, for me, would have, at worst, killed me, and at best, I probably would not be here tonight talking with you guys. And I decided to go to medical school, came from a family where nobody went to college, and food insecurity was part of what I grew up with. We got the food that we could get on food stamps. But my mom made it, she always made the food. She put her energy into that food and her love into that food. And we always had dinner. There was a tremendous amount of chaos in my house, but we always had dinner, all 6 of us. Fast forward, I went to medical school, was deciding between surgery and psychiatry, and ended up going into psychiatry. I was influenced by a psychiatrist who he himself had recovered from anorexia and actually talked about that in front of medical students and colleagues. And that just opened up my world to me. And it was a unitive experience, which I think is one of the themes that brings this whole thing together tonight. There was unity, there was connection. And I've brought that into all of my clinical work. It's hard to carry that in medical training because they really try to beat it right out of you. But I needed it, I needed it to survive. And it's given me not only a life that's full of abundance and freedom and meaningful connection, but a career. It's given me my life's work, which, I was talking to somebody who's a therapist out here for somebody I treated when they were 15. And I love this person, and somebody was like, why did you come all the way out here from Chicago? I was like, to hear that, to know that this kid is not a kid anymore and is like still doing well with both her eating disorder and her addiction. So I'm just happy to be here and grateful somebody connected me with Dr. David Wiss, and I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Kim. Mr. Shaya, can you drop in and come tell us who you are? And
No, I mean, I just hit a table.
please, please. And I'm happy to hold this for you if you like.
No, that's really nice. I'm actually going to skip the personal intro. I thought your bio was fine. I'm happy to talk to anybody after about my personal journey. I wanted to kind of introduce the topic because there's not a free space to do it, if that's cool. I prepared a written statement. I think it's like 3 minutes and 30 seconds, and the clock is moving. God bless everybody. Happy New Year to some of you. How's everybody doing? You guys okay? You can bless me back. I could use blessings. That's all good. Okay. So first, I'd like to give gratitude and acknowledge all of our privilege to be safe and secure while there are many around the world in this moment who are not. Important to say that out loud. Thank you, Dr. David Wiss, for inviting me to speak. It's been a pleasure to know you all of these years. When I first met David, I was making $11 an hour and smoking cigarettes. I'm happy to say I no longer make $11 an hour. When discussing a topic as deep as today, the topic of plants and plant medicine, I aspire for my words to be like plants, always leaning and growing towards the light. Plants have been on Earth for about 470 million years, while modern humans, Homo sapiens, have existed for roughly 300,000 years. This means that plants have been around 469.7 million years longer than we have. Age does not connote wisdom. I know that because I have some older friends. However, from an evolutionary perspective, it does connote hundreds of millions of years of ecosystem participation and refinement. So the suggestion and the frame in which I'm choosing to approach this topic is from a place of humility and subordination to our older cousins on the evolutionary chain. To delve into the question of plant medicine's role in the treatment for mental health issues requires us to ask a broader question, namely, what do we mean when we speak of mental health? Think about that just for a second. At first, oh, I know what that means, and then you go, wait a minute. It's actually a challenging question. Is being mentally healthy simply adjustment to the norm? Does it imply that the healthiest individual in this room is the one who blends seamlessly into an average state of being? Is such an existence truly healthy? This inquiry naturally unfolds into a more troubling contemplation. What if the norm itself is pathological? What if an entire society is unwell, so deeply entrenched in its dysfunction that aligning oneself with it means embracing sickness without recognizing it? This leads us to an even more intimate question. Are we, each of us, sick? We who systematically devastate our natural environment, our very home, while debating only the speed and severity of its destruction. We who pass by the suffering and destitute with practiced indifference. We who slaughter millions of animals without a second thought, who are transfixed by screens, yet never pause to witness the sunrise. We who pledge allegiance to ideologies peddled by corporate-backed parties. We who often live disconnected from both this terrestrial planet that give us life and alienated from the inner depth of our own souls. So I ask again, are we sick? And if we are, can plants help us? My answer is I hope so. And I have a sneaking suspicion that if we are to make it as a species, that our connection to plants, our return to the garden, so to speak, will play a vital role in this process of redemption. My name is Yeshaya Blakey, and I'm an alcoholic in recovery for 21 years. And I have been intentionally engaged in the use of plant medicine as part and parcel of my healing journey. And it's very good to be here with you fine people tonight. What's happening? Thank you, man. I have been an informal liaison between the recovery and mental health world and the plant medicine world for over a decade now, but have never spoken about it in my hometown in a setting like this. I'd like to locate myself publicly so my potential biases are transparent. I am an advocate and a supporter of the reverential, artful, and skillful integration of plant medicine and other psychedelic medicines into our human global society. Not just for recovery and the healing arts and therapies, but also potentially in religious contexts, safe recreational contexts, family life, and otherwise creative and relatively safe use cases. There are certain substances, mainly plants and funguses, which can open the heart and raise the horizon of conscious awareness. These mysterious plants grant access to new perspectives, experiences, and very strangely spiritual reality. A rich and infinitely deep ecosystem of which we know very little. But we do know there's some sort of strange relationship between this spiritual world and the healing of personal, familial, and transpersonal trauma. Unbelievably, it's common to gain access to the unconscious, buried trauma with the use of these medicines. It is not uncommon to experience spirit, the divine, ancestors, and the cosmos itself reaching in to assist the healing of trauma that's been embedded for years and even generations in individual and family lines. I'm going to skip some. It's long, but I want to freestyle too. Okay, so these medicines can help humans heal, not just individuals, but perhaps society as a whole. The medicines will not get us there alone. We'll need great vision, will, skill, a lot of luck, and perhaps some blessing to be able to avoid the catastrophic disintegration of our global community. I believe psychedelic medicine has the potential to play a significant role in helping us remember who we really are and ultimately assist us in our spiritual evolution as a species. Thank you very much.
We have so many important topics to cover tonight, and I am going to pose our first question. What is your opinion on the medicalization of mental illness and the monopolization of the pharmaceutical industry on mental health recovery? Kim, can you kick us off?
Why me?
A psychiatrist.
I'm a psychiatrist. I have a prescription. Actually, I don't even have a prescription pad anymore. I have a computer that e-prescribes medications. And, when we think about are we sick, most definitely the United States of America is sick. I mean, the data speaks for itself, right? We have, of all of the advanced countries, we have the worst health outcomes by a lot. Maternal fetal death rates, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes mortality, mental illness. And when we look at our healthcare spend, it's way more than any of the other countries in the world. And a large part of that, the biggest part of that, the two biggest parts of that go to healthcare administration, insurance costs, big industry, and big pharma. And I learned very early on at the University of Chicago in my training, our institution didn't even allow drug reps to come in, let alone drop off pens and trips and feed. They always bring food. And that has deep influence in the way medicine is practiced today. And unfortunately, what's lost from medicine today is the human component. You think about going to your primary care doctor. How many of you have actually made eye contact with that doctor these days instead of that person on their screen typing in answers? And I think that hurts physical health. I know that hurts mental health. So, I think there's value in being able to give people language around what they have if they are struggling with something, and knowing what it is. And there's value in having tools to be able to treat it. But when healthcare becomes about making the most money and is completely unregulated, people die, plain and simple.
Thank you, Kim. Carolyn, tell us your opinion on the medicalization of mental illness and the monopolization of the pharma industry.
I was sitting here thinking how interesting my world, I said the other day, I was with some friends and I said something like, everything I know I've learned from treating eating disorders. And they said, that sounds like a good book. And I was just thinking the way I look at this, I was thinking of this social psychologist, Kurt Lewin, who said, if you truly want to understand something, try to change it. And I thought that's what I've been trying to do with my own eating disorder and then helping a lot of other people with their eating disorder for so long. And you cannot change the trajectory of someone with anorexia nervosa by medical parameters. And, I think that in some ways what's happening is parents and newly trained therapists and even physicians are being led down this path a little bit that I hear a lot with the overemphasis on things like CBT and FBT. And I hear parents saying, well, I have to get my kid up to this weight. And then they say when she gets up to the right weight, then she'll think better and then she'll get better. And that's what happens to me with the medical focus and over pressure on using medical terms and medicalizing everything. And I think it's really easy to force someone to gain weight. It's really easy when you put them in a treatment center to keep them from binging and purging. But it's the internal shift that has to happen. Are they going to keep doing those things when they leave? And that's psychological, and that the medicalization of things, I think, is getting us away from individualized treatment. We get all these protocols that we have to follow, and following, if their labs are up, or all these different things. And I know I'm now taking on a whole nother country. I'm working in Australia with their first ever residential. And the same thing is happening that was happening here in 1996 when I opened up Montanito. And I just want to point out a little bit, when the genetic research started coming around about eating disorders, it was like, biochemistry and medicalization and all the research has helped us and hurt us in the sense of when the genetics came out. For those of you who know eating disorders, it was like, oh my God, eating disorders are a genetic illness. And that's just not true. But it was overplayed with sound bites in the media and everything. And then it was said, oh, it'll help the stigma if we say that. But I had clients showing up and saying things like, why bother? I heard it's genetic, so why bother? So it wasn't really helping them. And the thing to keep in mind is it's a risk factor. Genes are a risk factor. So we just get overly... this over-narrow focus. And there's a big paradigm clash when that happens, and there's a lot of research. The paradigm, like what causes eating disorders. So I think people have heard that it's a biopsychosocial, and dare I say, spiritual illness. It's all of those things, and all of those things have to be treated in order for people to get better, and there's a ton of research about that, good prevention and treatment researchers, where, you can just see it. And by the way, I have a lot of notes. It's my temperament to make sure that I have notes and come here. It's a little bit of my anxiety. But anyway, if you want a copy of these notes, please sign up. I have a booth over there, and I'm going to cite a lot of research, and I want you to go look at it yourself. I knew with 2 minutes responses to these things that I wouldn't be able to tell you what I want to tell you, but there's great research that shows body image dissatisfaction is the #1 predictor of who's going to get an eating disorder. So there's just things that the medicalization, I think, has really caused a lot of problems. The other thing I want to say is I don't call eating disorders a disease, and that could be up for discussion. I've never called it a disease. It's too medical to me. I think cancer and leukemia and MS, those are diseases. I never wanted my clients to feel like they had a disease. I'm like, no, I had anorexia. I suffered from anorexia, and I recovered from anorexia. That's why I encourage them not ever to use the term "I am anorexic" and over-identify with the illness. No, you suffer from anorexia, and you can be recovered from it. And then I just want to say one last thing about Big Pharma. There's just this glaring lack of nutrition education for everybody. In schools, for physicians. I'm sure you didn't get it, you know. I mean, I'm going to say something about that a little bit later, but we have heaps and heaps, and there's all these books, but it's a little known fact that I actually have 2 books about this, little books, little booklets, and one of them's called Zinc and Eating Disorders, and the other one's called, what's it called? Anorexia and Bulimia, A Nutritional Approach. And I just want to say something about the guy that I wrote them with and something about this book, but I'm going to try to do it really fast. The guy who I co-wrote the books with, Alex Schaus, his whole life has been studying nutrition and brain research and everything. And I went to a lecture by him in the mid-1980s, and it was about allergies, and there was a boy, one of the parts in the thing was a boy who had ADHD, and they showed a picture of him at school. And Alex was talking about Ritalin being overprescribed, and he's running around the classroom pulling a kid's hair and all that. And then he shows, and this is the first time I've ever seen anything like this, he shows a picture after he's diagnosed him with an egg allergy, and now his mom is not giving him the eggs, and they send him to school. And he's sitting in the chair, and he's super calm, and he's not causing any problems. And I'm like, wow. And I had just had a hair analysis done. I don't know if any of you have ever done that. And this guy Alex, was talking about hair analysis. So I walk up at the end of his talk, and I said, I have a question for you. I had a hair analysis done, and it showed that I was deficient in zinc. Can you help me, understand that? Do you know anything about that? And he said, have you ever had anorexia nervosa? And I went, oh, how did you know that from my hair? And we started talking, and it turned out the Lancet, the prestigious medical journal, had just published an article that if rats were deprived of zinc, they developed anorexia. So I have a book on that, and I don't talk about it very much, because back then, it was like voodoo. I would test people in our treatment center, and I would give them liquid zinc. There's a certain way you have to do it. But we wrote another book together, and this is the one you're going to be most interested in, about nutritional treatments, that instead of big pharma, nutritional treatments for what a lot of our patients were taking. And well, you probably don't know, but a lot of them were prescribed antidepressants and Prozac and all this stuff, and it generally stops working. It can be helpful, but I want to here are some of the things in that book for depression. St. John's wort, one of the most thoroughly researched plant-derived antidepressants. In 1995, the year before I even opened Montanito, there were 23 double-blind studies. And there's other things in the book, tyrosine and tryptophan and valerian root for sleep instead of these heavy meds. So and the other thing we did was we didn't prescribe medication until we renourished them. And that's a big thing. And if anyone looked at the Keys study, you'll see that, people who were starved in the war developed all these weird food behaviors and OCD and all this stuff. So you got to get people's nutrition up. Mm-hmm. And then the last thing we did, and again, controversy, we gave them a lot of supplements. We gave them calcium, and we gave them, I'm going to look at my list now, because I forgot all the things that are on there. Oh, I don't know where it is. But anyway, we gave them a lot of digestive enzymes. We gave them, I can't remember the name of things, during refeeding. We gave them supplements that helped them because they were nutritionally depleted in all these different things. And I think now, I don't know if that's happening in any treatment centers now, but I think, by the time people come to you with an eating disorder, they're depleted in all these different things. And so we need to restore them, and it wasn't just with healthy food, but with supplements too.
and thank you, been making the argument for my entire career, and I'm gonna say it again, this is the hill that I could die on, is that nutrition deficiencies should be addressed before any new psychiatric diagnoses are made, right? Especially with substance use disorder and eating disorder. A lot of the nutritional deficiencies mimic symptoms of psychiatric diagnoses. So when people come into treatment and they have been unwell, they're oftentimes diagnosed and started on a new medication regimen before the actual nutritional deficiencies are addressed. And I think that is a key message in the nutrition for mental health conversation. Shaya, do you have something to add? Please, Kim.
Two things real quick. One is that supplementation is fairly standard now in treatment center, eating disorder treatment centers. You know, and it was highly controversial when you were doing it.
I hid it.
Just so shocking. But two, one of the other wrinkles about what Dr. Wiss just said is, and what we're talking about right now is, we know that nutritional deficiencies, we know that somebody being in post-acute withdrawal for months can mimic depression, can mimic, you know, a vegetative depression. And if a person's at a residential treatment center and wants to use their insurance benefit, which they pay for to be in that residential treatment center, and there isn't a doctor throwing meds at them and making med changes every 5 days, guess what the insurance says? They don't need to be in a residential setting, right? So this is a multifaceted.
The commercial determinants of health.
Yes.
Thank you for adding that. Shaya.
I'm gonna keep it tight, man. I'm gonna keep it tight, I promise. All right, here we go. I mean, if I were to pick a side, I'm from Berkeley, you know what I mean? And so I'm like somewhere in the hippie street punk side of this. I'm not a big pharma stooge for sure. That being said, maybe I'll put a little nuance into the conversation for my experience. Adam and I, my friend Adam over there, we started a treatment program called Recover Integrity. It's dual diagnosis, trauma-informed treatment, pretty high acuity. We're treating some pretty significant substance abuse. We've been open around almost 10 years. We've probably prescribed Suboxone as a somewhat maintenance part of treatment, probably somewhere between 7 and 9 times. Not 79, 7 or 9, somewhere like that. We've probably treated, I don't know, 800 people or something like that. So it's a fairly small percentage. But there are certain situations where it definitely felt like the best choice. When I've heard at certain conferences, you know, I mean, I have my issues with big pharma, of course, and efficacy and structures, but there's practicality also. And so the other side for me is definitely, we've had clients where I was really grateful for antipsychotics. Really, really grateful for it. And there's also, I think there's a huge financial issue, like, because we're living sort of in a world that's already moving, right? Not an ideal world. And in a world that's already moving, it costs a lot of money to provide individual care. Like to come to Recover Integrity, we're like well-priced in LA, whatever that means.
Right.
But that means like 5% of people in the country can afford us without insurance, right? And so, you know, what do you do for 150,000 fentanyl addicts in Ohio? They're not gonna have a case manager, a spiritual counselor, a therapist, you know, and so I understand the governor saying, let's dump Suboxone on the problem so less people die this year. Is it the right choice? I'm really not sure. I'm not, you know, I'm not on the ground. I definitely think there's overprescribing. I mean, God bless every psychiatrist. I have huge issues working with psychiatrists in the addiction field. So there's a lot of complexity and nuance. Where would I end? Well, I guess part of what I wanted to do was Mike and I opened this place, and we wanted a place that really looked at relationship and time and safety and care and wisdom as a treatment for mental health and substance abuse. And it's kind of an experiment. It's a lab. And I'm curious, like, okay, we're treating some of the same clients you might treat in a treatment setting. You know, is it going to be as effective? Well, I'll tell you in a couple of years, you know.
Thank you. And let's move on to a topic that I think a lot of people are interested in. There's an avalanche of research, massive buzz in the popular press about ultra-processed foods. Let's start with Kim, if you don't mind sharing your insight and experience with running a food service operation, an eating disorder treatment center, some of the challenges, victories, and your vision for the future.
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest challenges to having more pervasive plant-based foods in a treatment center setting where we are treating people using the money that their insurance company says this is what this treatment is worth, right, is cost.
Yep.
Right, and this is reflected in the food supply chain for the country, for the world, really. Ultra-processed foods are cheap. They can be made quickly.
They store forever.
They stay around forever. Yeah. If you close down one treatment center and open up another one in 5 years, they're still there. Don't lose that investment. So cost is one of the issues. In the eating disorder field, another, highly controversial topic is ultra-processed foods. Addiction in general is highly stigmatized in the eating disorder world. But there's a dogma right now that's strongly held by eating disorder professionals that all foods fit, and that translates to walking into eating disorder treatment centers and only seeing packaged, ultra-processed, fast foods, like quick foods, versus what Carolyn was talking about. Get your hands in the food. Plant the food, like we have a garden for the months that we can have such a thing in Chicago, outside of both of our residential units, so that people are engaged in their community where they live on the unit. They're engaging with the earth, and they're using that to make food and feed themselves. So there's a stigma in the eating disorder world about, talking at all about food quality.
Right.
And this fear that if you talk about that, you're going to make anorexia worse. And everybody has anorexia. The majority of the patients that I treat at SunCloud with eating disorders have something called OSFED, other specified food and eating disorder, bulimia nervosa, and binge eating disorder. So, and there are ways to talk about food quality with people who have anorexia that are not diet culture, that are not stigmatizing, that are not going to perpetuate the cognitive aspects of that disease.
So there's been a culture in eating disorder recovery that a cupcake equals recovery, and this could be 100% true for the person that was very aversive to the cupcake, but it doesn't make it true for every single person that has an eating disorder. Is that correct?
I would say that's correct.
Thank you, Kim.
And I think, a cupcake, I think the goal of recovery is freedom, liberation. Can you eat in a way that is true to who you are? Like your God-given fingerprint inside of you. And that's not going to come from dogma out here, or a person forcing you to eat something that, you're being pathologized for, saying, I can't eat that food because when I do, X, Y, or Z happens. And we see that with food sensitivities all the time. If a person with an eating disorder says, hey, I have a sensitivity to lactose, or I have a sensitivity to gluten, and they might also have lupus, right? It used to be the case that, and I used to be one of these practitioners who said, unless I have a biopsy of your small intestine showing that you have celiac disease, like you're gonna have gluten at my treatment center. What a pompous asshole I was. I still can be, but I'm growing. But we don't do that anymore. We actually listen to people and listen to their lived experience in their bodies and what happens when they put certain things into their bodies. And we try to help them figure out what's truly theirs and what's maybe part of this metabogenetic, psychobiological, spiritual illness.
So some people with eating disorders can eat in alignment with their values and it not be pathological.
Yes, that's the goal.
Carolyn, please weigh in.
Oh my gosh, this started with being a vegetarian. I remember when I opened Montanito, and it's like, you can't let people be vegetarians. I'm like, why not? You know, the eating disorder field in some way has become so prescribing and so dictating to people about what exactly number they should weigh and what food they should eat. It's really interesting to me. And they get really more obsessed than the patients are sometimes with weights. And anyway, it's really interesting. You know, when I opened Montanito, I knew a lot about nutrition and what was working with people. I had been in private practice for 15 years. I had a lot of experience. I said I, you know, changed the hospital systems I was working in. And, you know, the food service part of it was super important to me. After all, it was an eating disorder place, you know. And I said I had learned from my own experience, you know, what helped me. And I just want to read you briefly. I finally came up with, when I wrote the 8 Keys book, with Gwen, what is my philosophy of eating, you know? And I call it conscious eating, not intuitive eating, because our intuition about food has gotten all screwed up with the highly palatable, highly processed foods. Once you have an eating disorder, if you've restricted for a long time or you've binged and purged your brains out for a long time, you can't, I mean, if I would have checked in with my intuition, it would have been like, oh, an apple maybe today, you know? So and by the way, I have respect for the people who wrote the intuitive eating book, and I think they helped a lot of people, but this is just, I realized, okay, so here's what conscious eating is, and then I want to talk about why it's controversial. Here's what we say in the book. When you practice conscious eating, you place an emphasis on awareness of your body signals, you incorporate general education about nutrition, and you take into account any relevant health information and eat the foods you truly enjoy. It's important to give yourself permission to eat all foods. That doesn't mean you have to eat all foods. It means that give yourself permission to do it, because not giving yourself permission puts it up on the shelf. That's the taboo. That's the thing then you go for. Many people are unconscious when eating and lose touch with their body signals, hardly taste the food they consume, and have little awareness about how much they're eating. The goal of conscious eating is to be conscious enough to stay connected to your body sensations of hunger and fullness, conscious enough to be aware of what other people and the conversations around you, and conscious enough of, here's the controversial part, health and nutrition information to make appropriate choices for yourself without depriving yourself. Okay, so you know what people say? Health, you're going to educate them about, what are you going to tell them about nutrition? And health, isn't that a wink for diet culture? Like, when did the word health become diet culture? And that has happened in the field, and this is where the eating disorder community and the health and wellness community collide. It has nothing to do with weight. I never even had weight loss as a goal with any patient ever at Montanito. It didn't matter what they came in for and how much they weighed. There never was weight loss as a goal. And the thing about it is UPFs now, okay, so when I first heard this thing about, we're going to talk about UPFs, and when people started talking, I learned more about UPF, ultra-processed foods. I had sort of that same reaction like the gluten thing, you know, like, oh, you know, this is going to be one of the, I don't want to hear about not eating junk food. I had to learn, you know, I like my pizza, I like my Good and Plenty's, you know, I don't want to give that up. But UPFs nowadays are not what, how many people here have read a book about ultra-processed foods? Any book, like Food Crime or, yeah. Well, it's not what you think it is. I'm going to flip ahead. Can I give up some of my time on plant medicine and talk more about this?
Yes.
Because there's so much
Take
more,
another
no
minute.
more than
Take
I do
another
about
minute,
it.
please.
I want to show you something. Can you see this? You don't have to read the words. Just see the list of ingredients in McDonald's fries then and now. Here's the former list of ingredients. On the right is the list now. I want to show you another one. This is just a visual. Ritz crackers. Here's what it used to be. There's what it is now. It's not what you're thinking. It's not just like, oh yeah, don't eat too much junk food. It's like you will learn. Anybody see on a bread package L-cysteine? in bread? Anybody heard that word before? You know where they get it from? To put in your bread? Hair, human hair that they buy. There are so many things that you're going to find out. So it's not, if you, okay, I know.
Yeah.
But I have to say this because I'm in the eating disorder field. And I have to say, there are like thousands of additives that are added to your food that are allowed in the US that are not allowed in Europe. Other countries are doing a way better job than we are at labeling foods and all that. It's not about not wanting people to not eat these foods ever, but what I said about educate, some education about nutrition, and I have many things that I will not get to tonight that are in the handout about the things you can do, the things the government can do and all that. But I just had to say, it's not what you think it is when we talk about highly processed foods. It's different from what you used to think.
Thank you.
No, I have to say something else. I'm giving up time.
We gotta move. We got one or two more questions.
Okay,
fine. Thank you. Carolyn referenced a book called Food Crime, which is a new book that outlines all the different ways that transnational corporations have engaged in deviant and illegal, immoral behaviors around food, things like fake olive oil, fake honey, and it's like really disheartening when you learn what goes on behind the scenes, especially here in the United States. And the question, and this is what's come up for a lot of us, is like, is this information triggering to someone that has an eating disorder, right? And in some cases, maybe it is. In other cases, yeah.
You have to let me say something
Please.
or I'm going to bounce out of here. I won't be able to stand it. I need to say that what I did at Montanita was 80-20. I mean, 80% healthy food, and we had a garden, and we had a chef come and make the food, but we would also add in other things. We would take them out for pizza night. We would take them out for burger night. We would do things, let them buy candies and have it in their bin if they wanted. But overall, it was this sort of balanced way of doing it. So it can be done, and it actually can be done financially also. And I want to read, and it's really quick, I swear. I want to read, you have to teach people to have a relationship with food and plants. What you read and what you were saying about plants and our relationship to plants, if someone with an eating disorder gets that about the food they're eating, they change. And plant medicine is one way to do it, but there are other ways. And having them plant food and then care for the food and make the food and then write food blessings. And I want to read this food blessing that's really quick, but you will see this could not have been written by somebody who was just eating highly processed food. And here's what she said. Food, thank you for being light to my heart. Thank you for being energy so I can be. As I'm about to eat, I bless the food for its ability to sustain me. I honor the journey it has made so far and the journey it will take inside of me. I thank you, food, for giving up your life and for the pleasure you're about to give me so that I can have mine. I am no longer blind to the miracle that you are. I no longer resist what you have to offer me. The soul in me recognizes the soul in you, and we become one. And I don't think she would have gotten there if she did not have a relationship to plants and plant-based food. Okay, I had to say that.
So good, thank you. We're gonna do one more question for each of our panelists, and then we're gonna have a little bit of time for question and answer, and then of course we have dinner right around the corner. So food is medicine. That has been thrown around. Shaya, I'd love to hear your take on this adage. Do you believe that the quality of what someone eats profoundly influences their chances of achieving peak wellness? What have you seen in the field, in your personal life, and how does this intersect with plant medicine?
In my personal life, it took me 40-something years, and I am 40-something years now, to realize that what I was eating had a profound effect on my mood day to day. And still, sometimes I'll wake up and I go, I'm depressed, and I look at all of the things in my life that aren't going right, and then I realize I had ice cream last night, and I was like, oh no, it's just the ice cream, dude, you're okay. So that's my personal life. And I have a whole thing with food. I've like called David Wisk asking him how much he costs like every 5 years. I'm like, how much does it cost to work with you? I thought, Carolyn, I thought what you said about relationship was really huge. You know, what I see in substance abuse treatment or mental health treatment is that you have to connect to fill in the blank.
Yep.
You know,
That's
so
right.
for some people that's 12 steps. For some people that's religion. For some people, not many that I see, but people say it, it's CBT. Sorry. For some people, it's plant medicine and the plant medicine community. Which is focused on healing and spiritual growth often. And for some people like you, it's the food and health community. And that's not as big as big a slice of the pie, but that's probably because we're not making that as available in treatment as a community and sort of eating in our relationship to plants and that piece as a way of being. You know, I've seen that in you and I've seen that in several other people. And so I would say it's all about relationship. There is definitely something about both the relationship to food and the relationship to plant medicine that has interesting benefits that I don't think exist in some of those other arenas. One of them is that both of them have to do with the living world. Yeah, you know, I asked this question, what is mental health? And I think it's very difficult to say that there's such a thing as being mentally healthy without being aware of our participation in the natural world. So I'm saying society's sick and we don't look at the sunrise. I really mean it, you know. And so food can be that for people, you know, as we ingest food and we form relationships and we get in that community and we start to learn and that becomes our thing, you know, your shtick. Plant medicine's interesting, and they're different. There's a lot of nuance in plant medicine, so I'm not going to it's complicated. But speaking generally about it, one of the things that I love is that with the right setting, medicine, intention, stabilization, et cetera, safety, it really raises awareness. You know, you and I were having that conversation on the phone, and you know, for a lot of people coming into mental health and substance abuse treatment, they don't know they have bodies. They're just they're just in their head. I mean, they really don't know they have, and I say they like me, you know, 20 years ago. Like, they don't know they have bodies, you know. And plant medicine is one of those things where you drop in and you take a breath sometimes, and you go, oh my God, I haven't ever taken a breath. Like, that was oh, I have lungs. Oh, I have a heart. Oh, I got tubes that go from the back of my heart to the back of my eyes. Oh, I can cry. Oh, I've been clogged up. Oh, I've got trauma. Oh, I have a liver. You know, it's like, suddenly I become very aware of my embodied nature. Interestingly, I also become aware of my spiritual nature and the relationship between my spiritual nature and my body. I never understand it fully, but I get glimpses of like, whoa, you know, I'm a soul, I'm a spirit, I also have this, you know. And so there's that awareness piece for me that's huge when because people are stuck. People are stuck in their worldview, they're stuck in their nervous system. It's all one thing. Right? And so people are actually walking around in their body in a prison of thought and negative emotion in loops. Really terrible. And talk therapy, you know, a lot of the time doesn't do it. Sometimes your relationship and empathy doesn't do it. Sometimes time doesn't do it. And there are plenty of circumstances where plant medicine can be a really great tool to just, you know, get out of that cage for a minute and go, oh, wait a minute, there's another way of being, you know.
Thank you, Shia. Kim, take us home with plant medicine, food medicine, nature, connection, calls to action.
Yeah, so, I mean, I was just thinking about that point in my recovery where my sponsor said, it's time for you to get a plant. And I was
Get
like,
a plant.
a plant? Like, that feels like way too much responsibility. Like, I cannot keep a plant alive. And, you know, and now I have life all around me. And, you know, I think food as medicine is, when I think about trauma, when I think about our society, we're very dissociated. And dissociation is one of the adaptive responses to overwhelming stress and trauma. And one of the things about eating, and mindful eating in particular, is that it can be very grounding. You know, if you actually pay attention to what's going on. And that, you need safety in order to be able to pay attention to what's going on and not just constantly be in fight, flight, joining the grind. When I think about, like, do I want to be like the rest of, like, Americans? No offense, y'all, but no, thank you. I do not. And food is medicine. I think it depends on what kind of food, right? I think, Carolyn, you said something in the eating disorder field, which isn't said very often, but highly palatable foods. The CEO of Kellogg and all the food scientists at Kellogg have created food-like substances that hijack people's brains and make them think that they intuitively want to eat the whole bag of Doritos. Like, yeah, I want it. It tastes great. That's not intuition, and that's not connection. It's more of dissociation. So food is medicine. Depends what kind of food, and it depends on the context, and the intention, and the connection.
There's a difference between food as medicine and food as self-medication, too, right?
Yes.
Thank
Very
you.
important.
David, can I take 1 minute on
Please.
dissociation? This is just an interesting piece of research that came out. So they did the MAPS MDMA study, and they finished it years ago, and they treated veterans with PTSD, which is notoriously difficult to treat, and the results were quite good. I mean, the results were somewhere between like 68 and 72% no longer met criteria for PTSD after something like 18 hours of treatment, which is just nothing. One of the things they found much later was that although clients stabilized and didn't meet criteria for PTSD, many of them still had really strong dissociation, and MDMA in particular, sometimes there was kind of some bypassing that was happening around the dissociation. And recently they have started developing modalities utilizing ketamine and cannabis called PSIP, which is the unwinding of dissociation, and it's incredibly effective. Now everything comes with a warning sign with plant medicine. I always say, like, if you're talking about psychedelics, especially strong psychedelics, it's like nuclear power for the psyche. So it comes with a warning sign. That being said, it is important for people to know that these medicines can help people heal, and that there are currently resources in our country where you can use them legally, and other resources where you can use them safely. And that's important to say out loud because there are people dying,
Thank you for that.
Could I just say that there was a Nature article that was published looking at, sort of like how does psilocybin work, and one of the things that they found from brain imaging studies is it interrupts the default mode network, right, which is sort of like the neurobiological underpinning of ego collapse when that default mode network gets disrupted, and areas of the brain are now connected to each other in more of a unitive way rather than siloed, fragmented, which I thought was just very, it made a lot of sense.
I'm going to say something even weirder, which is that Adele France, who's doing a lot of work with psychedelic medications and people with particularly anorexia, but other eating disorders, said that in her experiences, and again, all of this is, what patient at what time and what practitioner and when in their life and, what motivation and all these things, said that she's seeing intergenerational trauma being healed. That's a very interesting thing, and like they've done these studies where they traumatize a rat and then it's handed down in the genes of the babies and the babies of the babies. Really super interesting. So what is that? And it is something about the vibrations, something that we don't know, something we don't really understand. I like to call it, out there on the quantum field, but something that's happening when people are experiencing this. And what I find, and again, the eating disorder field, it changes things in terms of almost giving them a different sense of how to go forward then with doing the rest of their work. It doesn't stop anorexia. It doesn't I don't know anybody who did a journey or a few journeys and then stopped having an eating disorder, but it opens the door to a portal where they can glimpse things that maybe they hadn't glimpsed before. And when you do that, I mean, someone might get there doing a lot of meditation, but if it opens a door, you can keep that door open with people by teaching them the other things, the meditations, or going out and looking at, that's one of my soul moment things, going out and looking at the sunrise. I would take the patients out there to do it, because that thing about being disconnected, the goal for me is to help people realize, oh, I'm not a body that happens to have a soul, you know, I'm a soul, and I happen to have a body, and we don't have mentoring for the soul, and I think plants are our mentors for that a bit. You go out in nature, and we would take them on nature walks. You don't have to meditate. Nature brings meditation right to you. Anyway.
Thank you. We have 10 minutes for questions from the audience. Who would like to begin? Yes.
Can you describe the, what was the acronym with the cannabis and the ketamine?
Like what the modality is?
Yeah, I need to write it down.
I can describe how it works. It's called PSIP, and the way, I mean, there's a big relational aspect here, but the kind of procedural setup is that you have somebody come in, you coach them in creating what they call the container, which is essentially to inhibit all of your defenses. So whether that's talking, whether that's twitching, you know, and you actually just stay completely still in a container. Then they utilize ketamine and or cannabis, or sometimes both, you know, which causes a huge rush of anxiety and slows everything down. And what they're doing is they're allowing you to experience all the fear that comes up and the dissociation, and they do that repeatedly over time in a relational container with another therapist, and eventually you get to those dissociated states and break through, and you start having those trauma release responses. So that's kind of how the procedure works.
Was that after the MDMA journey?
It was after. It was developed by, I can't remember the guy's name, he's out of Colorado. He's a doctor out of Colorado. But he developed it specifically because he saw that dissociation was still there in that population. And he was in the study, in the MDMA study.
Cool, thanks.
Yes.
Hi, thank you. So I work with children from an NICU all the way to 18. It seems the process starts pretty young, so I wanted to ask if anyone has an experience about how to change some of the policies in the public sector that is affecting, it's kind of a loaded question, but let's see how you do. Thank you.
Affecting what?
Well, the policies, well, if you have
Food?
experience in changing policy.
For food?
For food.
Yeah.
And 'cause I work with, I'm a DCFS social worker, so I work with that population from NICU to 18. Thank you.
I have thoughts if anyone doesn't.
Well, in case we don't get to it, I have pages. All you have, I have, on my call to action page, there are so many things that we can do. And so if can I just say a little bit? Like
Call to
organizing
action.
communities. The government has to give subsidies to other than just, you know, big farms, to small farms growing food. We have to take care of food. There's food deserts where people have to go a long way to even get healthy food. We have to educate people. There's all kinds of tips that I have here on how I've completely debunked the thing that it costs less to eat highly processed foods. You think that, but there's a lot of education that teaches people how to shop and how to cook and how to save money. And good organizations like Harvard did this whole thing and said it might be $1.50 a day more, but they did a lot of other things where it wasn't. So, and then there's organizations that also I listed down where people can contribute to and volunteer for, community organizations that are growing local food and growing organic local food and sharing it with the community. So there's a lot of things like that.
And parents need to, you know, my 10-year-old doesn't go grocery shopping and pay for his own groceries. You know, like I'm the person that's doing the grocery shopping and making the meals and saying yes or no to what they're eating. That's one thing. But also institutions, schools, hospitals. We don't have cigarette vending machines in hospitals anymore. because they kill people, you know. But when we think about what we feed patients who are in the hospital, it's food that will perpetuate their health problems, not help them to get better.
And the advertising to kids. We stopped, tobacco companies in 1985 started buying food companies. Like, it's unbelievable when you start looking at the companies that were bought. And they started doing, like you said, the same sort of thing to food. So we have to put pressure, in terms of who you vote for and all that kind of stuff, in terms of fighting back so that we don't have these foods advertised to kids. And there's some really tricky ways that some of the food companies have gone into other places, low-income places, and bringing all this high-processed foods for kids, So there's ways to fight back on that.
And in 2024, food is becoming a political issue, right? My experience as a dietitian, I've worked really hard to get grants approved in the Los Angeles County of Public Health, California Departments of Corrections, and I've seen progress. But as soon as it gets close, there's some force that's there to squash it, right? And that's the reason why we're here tonight, because if you can't change the entire system, which we would love to do, we can change social norms, and we can start to change the way we think about these issues to have a more direct impact and not wait for the system to change. Let's go with another question.
It's more a two-parter. I'm a registered dietitian, so I wanted to give the registered dietitian's perspective on your amazing question. I feel like when we're able to use our platform, it can really just be as a liaison, right? So for those who are most unfortunate, I guess, in their social standing, if anyone has access to CalFresh actually has dietitians that teach classes to teach people how to eat with that food that they buy. So maybe you can share that with those students that you're concerned about. Make sure that they know that that program exists, because a lot of things exist that people just don't know about. Yeah. One more question. So for all of those who, you are all owners and collaborators, my question to you is, what were your first steps towards starting your own private practice, your own business? I mean, you started with an idea, but what was that genuine movement forward?
I had a dream. I literally did have a dream. I had the only prophetic dream I've ever had, and it was 10 years before I opened Montanito, and I dreamt that I was in a house with 6 girls, and we were bringing food from the garden, and we were making dinner, and then we were going for a walk afterwards, and it wasn't until 10 years later that I started thinking about hospital is not a place to get well. I want to open a place, residential treatment center. And a friend asked me to come over. She was going to buy this house. And this is a true story. I drove up to the house, and I had this weird deja vu feeling. And I got out, and I walked into the home, and I went, oh, my God, it's my dream. And I told her all about it. I know where the kitchen is, and I know what the backyard looks like. And she ultimately went, okay, you can have the house. And I knew I was supposed to open a residential eating disorder program there. And I'm waiting for my next dream to come. But the thing is, I think what you have to do, when I knew what was happening wasn't right, I knew what I was seeing in the hospital was not right. It's still happening. And I felt like, I don't know if people will come. I don't know. There was no licensing for it. I had to open it under the licensing agency for an old age home because there was no license for residential here. And I did it anyway. And I just thought, sometimes I think I was afraid. I was nervous about it. A lot of people in the eating disorder field told me insurance is never going to pay for that, and they didn't for the first few years. But sometimes I think if you just have this feeling like, I know what's right, I know what I want to do, and it wasn't at all about making money. It was a small little 6-bed place, I think you just go one foot in front of the other, and then you see our doors kind of still opening, or our doors closing, and you pay attention to that. That's what I think.
Anyone else?
Yeah, mine was a love story. Right out of my residency training, I took a job at a place that hadn't opened yet, called Timberline Knolls, and poured my heart and soul into that place, created the program and the treatment model right out of residency, which is unheard of. And then it was sold. I didn't own it. It was sold to Acadia Healthcare, which some of you may have read about in the New York Times or in the, there's a federal investigation of that company. So a couple of years after they bought it, I was the CEO and medical director at that time. I was pretty devastated. And it was a traumatic loss for me to see something that I was a big part in building being sort of dismantled. And I kept coming home to my husband saying, like, I just can't keep going there because of what's happening. And he saw the effect of that and he's like, let's start our own. And I was like, absolutely not. Like, that, I am so tired from what I just did there. And we started small. And he's the business insurance. He does all the unfun stuff. I do the clinical stuff, which is where my heart is.
Great
and we
team.
Just small,
Excellent
one
team.
step at a time, like you said.
Shia.
I don't like talking about business, so excuse me. Can I take the time to say something else?
Yeah, we're going to all do take-home
cool?
calls to action. If you want to lead 30.
Yeah, I was making $11 an hour in nonprofits. I already
Yeah.
shared that.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I got 4 kids. It's LA. I had to sell out. I mean, I started a for-profit treatment. That's what it is. I like community also, and
Yeah.
I try to do good.
Take us home. Give us a minute.
Oh, my home
please.
thing. Oh, cool, man. I think something I wanted to say was around, I identify as somebody in recovery, and I celebrate 2 birthdays. And I kind of wanted to say out loud, I think it's important to start having the discussion about plant medicine in the recovery community. I think it's particularly important in Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12-step programs because they are still by far the most robust support system that doesn't cost any money in the United States. And it's been interesting being an informal liaison. I picked up that term, I just made it up. But what it means is really well-known people in the 12-step community would come to me and talk to me about using plant medicine. What it means is 35% of the therapists I know that work in treatment in Los Angeles are using plant medicine. And we got to start talking about it because some of the people that really need it don't know anything about it. And so there are a lot of leaders that are in the closet, so to speak. And, if the people that are responsible and have integrity and have experience aren't coming out and being honest about it, there's a less likely chance that it's going to unfold and mix with that community well. It's already happening,
Yes.
but I'm terrified of the kind of people that might step in and go, look what I'm going to do. I'm going to be like, oh my God, like by the time capitalism gets there, it's going to be really scary. And so, the people that are in the closet, I'm sure there are people in this room, it's time to start having those conversations out loud. I'm doing it out loud. It's an interesting experience for me to see how that unfolds.
I agree with you, sir. Thank you. Calls to action. Carolyn, 1 minute, please. 1 minute.
Okay, well, there are so many things, but I think in my arena, the eating disorder field has to come to terms with the concept of what healthy eating is. We just have to talking about it. We have to talk about it. It's so divisive if we even bring up that word, healthy eating, and there are ways to do it. I did it at Montanito. I do it in my own life. It can be done. And we also have to talk about this whole thing that's going on with ultra-processed foods because not talking about it because thinking that there's no equal access or that some people can't afford it is like not telling mothers about baby car seats, the information that we found out about that because some people can't afford it. It just feels wrong to me. So there are so many things we can do to have that. I hope that this stirs people to go get more information, which is why I said I'll send anybody who wants the handout. I encourage you to read a really, really, really interesting book that doesn't have anything to do with eating disorders or processed food, but called The Light Eaters, which is about plants. And it is about the unbelievable things that plants do, communicate with each other And there's an intelligence that you'll be blown away by, and I think that will be an exciting thing to leave you with going to do.
Thank you, Carolyn. Final thought, Kim.
Be curious, just be curious, be open, go in love, go gently, and respect each other, and pay attention to the children, because they know, they're very intuitively and naturally connected to the earth and naturally connected to our true instincts. And I learn the most from my patients and my children.
Me too. Thank you. Tonight, yes, let's hear it for our speakers. Tonight we talked about plants in various forms, nature, connection, mental health, community. We covered a lot of areas, and hopefully we built some community here tonight. We're also having a lot of resources for people that are interested in learning more about mental health recovery. There is an incredible sober living just up the street, not far, called Raven House. And we'd love to hear a couple minutes from Raven House. If you could share about your program, please come on up.
Hey guys, my name is Sheldon and this is Lauren, and we are the owners of Raven House Recovery. We are a 12-bed female and female identifying sober living, as he mentioned, right up the street in Westwood. The house is gorgeous. It's 4,000 square feet. It's 6 bedrooms, 6.5 bath, has like a pool, lounge area, spa, all the things. And so, yeah, we started this program together, and I'm going to hear a little bit from Lauren as well.
Thanks. All right, so yeah, our program includes compassionate yet firm guidance and schedule setting. We've got a live-in house manager. We provide transportation to PHP and IOP or programming, daily morning meditation. We coordinate with psychiatrists, therapists, nutritionists, families as appropriate. We also have curfew, breathalyzing, randomized 2 days weekly. We also just teach them to plan ahead with daily action plans, staying accountable. They share their location, and then they work with us and their team to gain more independence and freedom as time goes on. We have weekly house dinners, all kinds of that, like good stuff. Sorry, I'm reading. I have horrible social anxiety.
You're doing great.
Thanks. So, been sober for a minute, but still. So, we have a 3-month minimum, requirement or suggestion. No one is forced to be there, so they can leave at any time. And we just kind of aim to transition them through outpatient, if outpatient is appropriate, and then into volunteering, school, and work, while simultaneously building recovery community. We are based in 12-step. And then our purpose is just to reintegrate people into society with the structure and guidance and support they need to do so effectively. So.
Way to go.
And if anyone wants to take a tour, you guys are able to show the house. Come visit the Raven House, please. And the wonderful facility that we are at tonight is a program that's co-founded by Yeshaya and Mike Martin, who's going to come tell us just 1 or 2 minutes about the Antidote Lab. This is the incredible space that we are in tonight. Thank you.
Could we please get a big, maybe noisy round of applause for Dave motherfucking Wiss? Dave's a mentor and friend and colleague of mine, as is Yeshaya, the co-founder of Antidote. And I'm just really grateful that this event was able to happen here. I'm grateful to have so many people who concern themselves with helping others in our space. It just warms my heart. There's friends of mine here, colleagues of mine where we've worked with clients together, all the way to people who've performed major orthopedic surgery on me. So it's really, shout out other Dr. Wiss. So it's special for me that y'all are here, and if I haven't gotten to meet you yet, I'm sorry, and I hope to. And if you have met me already, it's probably because I parked your car when you pulled up. I didn't get to hear as much of the panel as I'd like because I was setting up the dinner. And the reason I was parking the cars and setting up the dinner, and none of that was a part of my plan tonight, it was to mingle and meet everybody and do a lot of really, really great networking and marketing, and my hands have been full the whole time, is because when I see a need, I fill it. And Antidote is just another extension of that way of being for us. We saw a need, so we wanted to fill it. Young people are getting stuck. And conventional models of treatment aren't the right fit for everybody. Shai and I looked at each other and said, man, what did we need? So we opened a program that focuses itself on embodied learning, participatory, therapeutic experiential exercises carefully crafted by skilled professionals that happen in this room, the lab, and we brought it to the market at a price point that was affordable for more people so that young people could get access to support in other ways. And I'll kind of end the Antidote Lab shtick there and just invite you to come learn more. We do have a booth at the front with a banner, and some of our staff are posted up around that. We want you to come in and spend one-on-one time with us and get to know us a little bit in the work we're focused on doing. And the exciting news is that November 1, we're launching a 90-day life skills intensive house that's going to go in conjunction with the lab work, where the lab is the mother, the house, Stoa House, is the father. And it focuses on the procedural learnings of life skills so young people can launch into life more effectively with good support. So that's my little bit, and I'm really stoked that everybody's here. And I'll go get your car for you and bring it back to you at the front. Thank you.
Really good job. And we did. There's a cold plunge, and you're invited to go 42 degrees. Couple other resources for people. Shia mentioned Recover Integrity. Dr. Kim and SunCloud Health, they have a booth there. Please learn more about their incredible program. Carolyn Costin's Institute, where she trains coaches to do this incredible work. Please get involved there. I mentioned Skylight Psychedelics. There's flyers around. This is a group that does training for professionals. Please check out the Wise Mind Nutrition app. It's a no-cost, low-cost resource to integrate eating real food intentionally without it being taxing on the mind. So my Wise Mind Nutrition, thank you. And yes, thank you. It is a way to improve your brain without taxing your mind. So it truly is a one-of-a-kind experience that is based on using nutrition to improve the brain, and it's not about calories and all the math-centric models. It is a more qualitative approach to nutrition, which is, I think, what our field desperately needs. My private practice is called Nutrition and Recovery. Several of our dietitians are here with us tonight, and we are available for institutional solutions. Stephen Winbrandt and Winbrandt Farms is available for institutional solutions. Please just raise your hand, Stephen. He brought the soil. If you didn't get a chance to smell it, to feel it, Stephen and I grew up in the same neighborhood, so I like to say that I stay loyal to the soil. And we have, yes, please, check out all of the booths. We have beverages tonight sponsored by Good Idea. There is a discount code, WMN. These are incredible drinks that you should try if you haven't already. Dinner, which we're going to do next, is provided by Sunin, which is a Lebanese restaurant right up the street on Westwood in Santa Monica. It is incredible food, and I can't wait for you guys to taste it. Go check out their restaurant. Dessert was graciously provided tonight by Montanito. Please stop by all of the booths. Please hang out for another hour, eat, have dessert, make some new friends. Before we drop into dinner, I'd like to request that we do 10 more seconds of silence to let the energy of tonight sink in. We move the energy around a lot. We talked about things that were new, different, exciting, and even controversial. I am so grateful for these incredible panelists. These are all friends of mine, mentors, and I'm extremely grateful for everyone that came in. Please join me in 10 to 15 seconds of integration. have 2 dinners. There is a dinner outside and a dinner in there. They're identical. We have 2 options. I'm going to ask that people on this side of the room go outside. We're going to open the door here. We're going to ask people on this side of the room to go to that table. There are places to eat, stand, hang out for a bit. Thank you very much.